Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have another vintage block. This one is called Providence, and I used two different colors and a low volume background, and it's made with half square triangles and quarter square triangles. So the techniques aren't difficult, but there are a lot of pieces in this block, so it takes a little bit of time. But I hope you'll stay with me and I'll show you how to make this block. Here are the pieces that you're going to need to make the Providence block. For A, you need 4 3-inch squares. For B, you need 1 2.5-inch square. C is 4 2.5-inch squares. D is 2 3.5-inch squares. E for your background is 2 3.5-inch squares. F is 4 3-inch squares, and G is 8 2.5-inch squares. And you will draw diagonal lines on the wrong side of the E squares and the F squares. So I'm going to adjust the camera and we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll get started, and we're going to make half square triangles first. Okay, to make my half square triangles, I'm going to use triangle paper. Now you can use whatever you want. You could use the 2 at a time method, and in the pattern those are the instructions that I give. So you can do it that way or any other method that you like to make half square triangles. So I'm going to lower my stitch length to 1.8, and for this paper I stitch on the dotted lines, and my fabrics are right sides together. So you can see there's the wrong side and this is the wrong side. So I'm just going to stitch on the dotted line, and then I'll come apart on the solid line, and then those will be done. Now if you do the 2 at a time method with my directions, I'm having you cut those squares about 1/8 of an inch larger than normal, and that way you've got room to trim down and get the exact size half square triangles. So I have my D squares and my E squares, and we're going to put those right sides together, and we're going to start by making half square triangles. So either use a piece of tape on your machine to guide. You can use your Seems So Easy guide if you have that. So for me, I'm going to do a diagonal line because I have better luck with that. And so I have a pencil and a ruler. This is, I don't know exactly where I got this ruler. I think this was my mother-in-law's. It's a really flexible plastic ruler. It's by the SoFit company. And I'm not sure where she got that. But, you know, the bed of my machine is kind of curved, so I can curve this with the bit of the machine. Okay, so we've got that. And I'm going to place all of these right sides together. And I will sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides of the drawn line. Line these up. I got them off kilter here. Okay. I'm going to go back to 2.0 stitch length. You can also use triangle paper for this part too if you want. That would make your half square triangles. But I'm just going to use this method. Okay, now for these, we're going to cut on the drawn line, and you can use your rotary cutter or scissors, doesn't matter. Just cut them apart so you have 2 half square triangles from each piece, so you'll have a total of 4. Okay, now I'm going to press towards the dark, and then we will put them back together, and I'll show you the next step in making the 1/4 square triangles. Okay, so now I have 4 half square triangles, and on the back of 2 of these I'm going to draw a diagonal line again. So let me grab my ruler and my pencil. And you want your diagonal line to go perpendicular to your seam because you don't want to cut that. So just like that. And like that. Okay, now I'm going to take the ones that don't have a line drawn and pair them up with one that do. And you want to place them so that your colors are opposite from each other. So I've got teal on white, white on teal. So when you pull them back, then you have your 1/4 square triangle. So I'm going to line all these up, and I'm going to go ahead and pin so they don't shift. Grab the other one, and you want those seams to nest together pretty tight, so make sure you've got them all snugged up together. Okay, and now I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides of this drawn line. I'm going to remove that pin. And get my seam down there. Okay, I'll pull this one out and then stitch the other one. All right, now we want to cut apart on this drawn line, and then we will have 4 1/4 square triangles. Just like that. And there we have our 1/4 square triangles. And we're going to press, and then we'll measure these and make sure they are 2.5 inches square, and we'll trim them down if we need to. And I need my mat. And my ruler. Now these need to measure 2.5 inches. And yeah, they're just a little bit over. So if you think about 2.5 divided by 2 is 1 1/4. So your 1 1/4 mark should end right there at that dot, which I can't see it. So let me take, it should measure, the corner here of 1 1/4 should end right there, and I can't, there's nothing there, it's blank. So I am going to get a couple pieces of glow tape, and you can use painter's tape or whatever you have, and I'm going to go right along the 1 1/4 mark that way. And this way. Okay, so that's where I want the cross piece, the very center where those seams meet. That I want that to end right there in that corner. So this way I can see a little bit better where that ends. So I'm still keeping the seam along that diagonal line. Turn it again. And that should be at, if I put this at 2.5, then that should be at 1 1/4. And it is, so there we go. So repeat. Diagonal line to the seam line. And I want the very center to be right at that corner there that I made with the tape. There we go. And each little square is going to be different. Some I'm going to cut more off of, and some will be less. Yeah, I feel like I can cut through that. There we go. So now we're ready to lay the pieces out to form the block. So we have half square triangles, quarter square triangles, and then we have the C, E, and G squares. So we're going to lay these out by row, and let me start up here. We're going to take a G square, and a half square triangle. It's going to go like this, a C square, another half square triangle, and this one is going to go this direction, and then another G square. Okay, so that's one row, and then the next row is another half square triangle, and that is going to face, those two are face, a G square, and then a quarter square triangle, and I want the colors to meet up, so just like that. And another half square triangle, and these two corners are going to meet. Okay, so those first two rows, and then for the center row we do a C square, a quarter square triangle, and do the same thing, match up the colors. The B square goes in the center, another half square triangle, and a C square. Okay, now the next two rows are just reverse of this, so we're going to do half square triangle, and they're mirror image too, so you want the triangle to face that direction. A G square, quarter square triangle, another G square, and a half square triangle that faces this direction. So in this row, G square, half square triangle, C square, half square triangle facing this direction, and a G square. So those are all the pieces laid out for the block. And you can sew these into units, or you can sew them by row. And I'm going to go ahead and sew by row on this one, and that way I can adjust the way the seams are pressed and when I go from row to row. So I'm going to do the first two pieces of each row and chain piece them together, just like this. And then when I get that done, then I will add the third piece, then the fourth, and then the fifth. Then I'll press, and then I'll sew all the rows together. Okay, so I have everything chained together. So here's all the rows, and now I can press. And there's different ways to do this. I'm going to kind of let the pieces tell me which way they want to go so that I'm not fighting them. And up here, it's basically if you've got a plain square meeting up with a piece that has a seam in it, it's going to want to go towards the plain square, and that's exactly what this piece is doing here. So I'm going to press it the way it wants to go, and the next row is doing the same thing, and I just want to make sure I've got those flat. Especially these quarter square triangles are going to want to press out. And since these pieces are opposite each other, that should work fine. So this seam is over here, this one's over here, this one's over here, and this one's over there. So they're all opposite each other, so these two rows will nest together really nicely. And the same with this one. This will do the same. So this is where a smaller iron would come in handy. So if you have one of those small irons, which I do have one of those little ones, but I don't think mine gets hot enough. Or if you have a vintage iron, those are smaller. And you can get into these places without messing with the other rows. Or you can just cut these rows apart and you don't have to fiddle the way I'm fiddling right now. Don't have to fiddle with them. So, last row. Okay. Let me pull this up, get it flat, and give them all a nice press, and then I'll turn this over so you can see what that looks like on the back. Now, I don't often keep things in chains because it's a little harder to sew because you don't have enough movement. But anyway, here's the back. So you can see all of the seams are running opposite of each other. Where they meet, they're all going to run opposite. So everything should nest in really nicely. So we're going to go back to the sewing machine and sew these rows together and the block will be done. All right, so I am just going to fold everything over and I'm going to pin at the intersections, at the seams. Okay, let's see how this first row goes. Just line everything up. That was snagging on something. Okay, now what's happening is, I'll show you here in just a second. Okay, I kept getting snagged in what is doing that are the chains. These chains here that are between each row, those are getting hung up on my foot, and I think that's just the way my foot is made. It has this little metal piece here that guides your 1/4 inch, and it's very sharp. It's got a sharp angle and it's flat. So when I press this down, it rests really firmly on the bed of the machine, plus the fabric. So it is these little loops that it's forming. When I've got these folded together, it's snagging on that. So I'm going to cut these apart. And sew them together this way. So that row is going to go there. And I'm going to lay these aside. Okay, and keep them in the right order. Okay, so make sure I got it the right way. Okay. Well, that is it for the Providence block. I hope you'll give this one a try. I think this one turned out pretty nice, and I like the colors, and I think this will go really good with the other blocks that I've made in this 10-inch format, so I think it'll make a pretty quilt. So if you like this video, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.